So
We could bring the meeting back to order, please. We can get as much business as we can get done tonight. If everybody would come back into the hall, take your seat.
yes, he's taken.
No, he had his arm around you. That's all.
This is a Board of Selectmen. Article 52 is next. We'll call the meeting back to order. The next article that we will deal with is Article 52. Article 52, which is proposed by the Board of Selectmen. Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes, Mr. Schleif.
I'd like to move Article 52 as printed in the warrant.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Yes, we have a motion and a second to approve Article 52. Mr. Schleif, it's your article. Would you like to speak to it?
To my knowledge, that this is a revision to the floodplain layouts as printed in the warrant for the county, Plymouth County Flood Insurance Study are incorporating here in reference floodplain districts is shown as an overlay district on the town Halifax zoning maps. It's pretty much what's printed in here. It's not much change from last year, I believe. Troy? Charlie? I confuse them sometimes.
Even when I was that much younger, and he was too. Floodplain. Yes, there are very few changes. The planning board had reviewed this at their zoning bylaw hearing. They're going to have to speak to this, but there are few, if any, changes to that. The floodplain maps, the new ones, are available for review at Town Hall.
All right. This is a zoning article, and we need a recommendation from the planning board. Is Mr. Greeley still here? Do we have a recommendation from the planning board? Can't act on this without a recommendation from the planning board. This article is a zoning article. The planning board has to hold a public hearing. I understand that the public hearing was not held, it was held, but it wasn't held within the time frame. It has to be past 21 days, otherwise the planning board has to make a recommendation. Mr. Schleif.
Mr. Moderator, could we possibly table this till the next time we meet? I know we have about 40 articles left, and we may not make it through them tonight.
We don't table it. We could withdraw the article. I could move to pass over. I would move to pass over. And then if you want to put us on notice that you may bring it up again for reconsideration, I would recommend that.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, Mr.
I'd
Schleif.
like to recommend that we pass over this article.
We have a second.
Second.
We have a second. A motion is second to pass over Article 52, which means we will take no action thereon. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes over. Mr. Schleif, do you want to make a comment about reconsideration?
Yes, I'd like to reconsider this at a later.
Just put the town on notice that you might
I'd like
bring
to
it
put
up.
the town on notice. Yeah, he got what he says.
Okay. Next article will be Article 19, which is proposed by Ida Hathaway. Article 19. Mr. Guerin?
This going out of order just throws things in chaos. You realize that, don't you? I move that the town vote to transfer from undesignated funds the balance sum of $3,500 to support the South Shore Women's Resource Center for Domestic Violence Intervention and Prevention Service for its residents.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second to transfer from undesignated fund balance the sum of $3,500 to support South Shore Women's Resource Center for Domestic Violence Intervention and Prevention Services for residents. Mr. Guerin, it's your article.
They have, over the past year, and it may sound like a small number, have dealt with at least 8 cases of domestic violence, unfortunately, within our town, not always advertised. And I think it lends support to a serious problem that we do have in our society right now. And I think supporting them will help us support ourselves and make us a better place.
Okay, Finance Committee's recommendation on Article 19.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 19? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor of Article 19, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next. Next article is Article 33. Which is proposed by the School Building Committee, Municipal and School Building Committee. Mr. Elliott?
Mr. Moderator, Jerry Elliott, Building Committee. No, Building Maintenance, sorry. I move the town vote to transfer $2,500 from undesignated fund balance and $2,500 from Article 37 Municipal School Chimney Article of the May 12, 2008 Annual Town Meeting for a total of $5,000 to purchase and install a new furnace in the Halifax Town Hall.
Do we have a second? Mr. Elliott, it's your, the motion is to transfer $2,500 from undesignated fund balance, $2,500 from Article 37 Municipal School Building Committee School Chimney Article of the May 12, 2008 Annual Town Meeting for a total of $5,000 to purchase and install a new furnace in the Halifax Town Hall. Mr. Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is one of the 3 in the newer section of the Town Hall, built in 1985. Its low efficient ratings, has a cracked heat chamber, and we're trying to improve the ratings for efficiency and savings.
Okay. Finance Committee's recommendation, Article 33.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 33? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Article 33 passes. Next article will be Article 11. Which is proposed by the Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Schleich.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $3,301 to fund the provisions of the collective bargaining agreement for the fiscal year 2016 between the AFS-CME, AFL-CIO, Union Council 93, Local 1700 Highway Cemetery of the town of Halifax.
Okay, do we have a second? Motion and a second to vote, raise and appropriate $3,301 to fund the provisions of the collective bargaining agreement for the fiscal year 2016 between AFS-CME, AFL-CIO, Union Council 93, Local 1700, in parentheses, Highway/Cemetery, and the town of Halifax. Mr. Schleich, this is your article.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. These bargaining units we bargain in the town, they're every 3 years, and every 3 years we sit down at the table and we hash out what we're all looking for to improve. One of the things is, obviously the past 6, 8 years, it's very hard to determine what monies are available. So we've asked these bargaining units to have a reopener on these off years. This is one of those off years that we have right now. And what we agreed to in these meetings, as far as these wages, in order to move forward with these contracts, is that if there's any money available in these funds, and whatever funds that are approved at town meeting, and this year it happened to be 1%, we would ask on their behalf of the contract to ask for the same amount.
Finance Committee's recommendation on Article 11.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 11? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor of Article 11 as proposed, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. That works out. The next article is Article 12.
Mr. Moderator,
Proposed by the Board of Selectmen. Yes, Mr. Guerin.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $2,856 to fund the provisions of the collective bargaining agreement for fiscal year 2016 between the IBEO, Local 309, Sergeants, and the town of Halifax.
We have a second? Motion and a second to raise and appropriate $2,856 to fund the provisions of the collective bargaining agreement for the fiscal year 2016 between IBPO, Local 309, in parentheses, Sergeants, and the town of Halifax. Mr. Guerin, it's your article.
As with the previous article, number 11, it's the same wordage, is that we agreed with the unions that we will represent them at our town meeting if in fact the town felt good about giving a 1% raise to the other non-union individuals, that we would ask that same amount be given to the union.
Okay. Finance Committee's recommendation on Article 12.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 12? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor of Article 12 say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Next up. Next article will be Article 62. Okay, this is proposed by Mrs. Carmen. Article 62 is proposed by Mrs. Carmen.
I move that the town vote to approve Article 62 as printed in the warrant, except that the words "Select Board" are replaced throughout with the words "Board of Selectmen."
That is, where is that, where does that show up in the article, do you know? In the bylaw?
The board, Section 5.
Oh, yeah, Section 5, I've got it. All right, page 38 on the warrant, or on your Finance Committee book, Section 5, Resolution of Disputes. You're telling me that that's a typographical error, and it should be Selectmen and not Select Board in those two places, right?
The town of Halifax refers to the select board as selectmen, whereas the state wrote this bylaw and used the different term. There's a couple of places.
Oh, in Section 4 also. Okay, so wherever it says Select Board, the title should be Selectmen.
Just because that's what Halifax uses.
Okay. So the motion is to approve Article 62 as written with the typographical change that any reference to Select Board is Selectmen, should be Selectmen. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We We have a motion and a second to approve. It's your article. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you. This article is what's known as a right to farm bylaw. A right to farm bylaw is an educational and informative bylaw. There's been a lot of talk about this bylaw, and I'd like to start out by saying what it is not. This bylaw creates no new laws. It gives no new rights to farmers to do things that they already do not have a right to do under state law. It doesn't give them the right to increase any pesticide uses. It does not give them the right to do things that are outside generally accepted farming practices. It does not give them the right to violate zoning bylaws. If this bylaw does not pass, it doesn't take away any laws or any rights that people who have livestock and farmers already have in this town. The purpose of this bylaw is merely educational and informative. It is to inform residents and incoming residents and new residents that this town already has agricultural activities going on, and that people own livestock in this town, and that those activities can result in sights, smells, sounds they should be aware of if they move in. So it gives guidelines of what to expect. It also informs people of what rights and privileges farmers have under state law. Again, it doesn't give many new ones, but simply informs people of what's going on. The goal of this bylaw is to reduce nuisance complaints, to promote agriculture, and to let people know. You know, people aren't surprised when they move into this town that what's going on. We are also hoping it's an affirmative vote of the town to be supportive of Halifax's rural historical culture. And it's a changing town, and I think someone spoke earlier about how we need to work together to make those smooth conflicts that inevitably come up. And this bylaw, given that it puts forth exactly what the rules and regs are for both the farmers and people who are not farmers, that more disclosure is better than less. And we're hoping that you'll get an affirmative vote on this bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Finance Committee's recommendation on Article 62.
The Finance Committee does not recommend.
Finance Committee does not recommend. Do you want to explain why?
I do want to explain why. So it was not a unanimous vote not to recommend, and I was one of the members who voted not to recommend, and I was a little bit torn on which way to vote on this, because I do like farming, and I love seeing the signs that say a community is a farming community, but we were concerned about the phrase in the law that says whatever impact may be caused to others through the normal practice of agriculture is more than offset by the benefits of farming to the neighborhood, community, and society in general. And although I do like to see farming, and I do think that there's many, many benefits to farming, it's a little concerning that that is stated in our bylaw, because there are certainly some practices of farming that can be bothersome to neighbors, and we're just concerned about having that be our statement in our law.
Okay. Any further discussion on Article 62? Yes, sir.
Although I can appreciate the Finance Committee's not recommending it, we've been a farming community since forever. And I think that we should be able to let people know that we are this has always been a farming community, and when people move into town, they should know that there's certain rights that the people that have practiced this for years and years and generations, that they can't move into town and just change who we are and who we stand for as a community, because they don't like the smell of manure, or they don't like the sound of heavy equipment going at 7 in the morning, or the sound of a rooster crowing. Yeah, it's annoying, but that's part of what life is, and that's where we get our food from. So I hope we can actually support a right to farming amendment.
Mr. Bolger.
Yes, Jeff Bolger, Halifax, Brandeis Circle. I certainly understand if a farm has existed for years and you know, if you moved into that neighborhood, you're doing that with that understanding. I'm just concerned the way this is worded, if, you know, some neighbor decides that they're gonna, you know, all of a sudden decide they wanna raise flocks of chicken and bring in roosters, and now you start getting woken up at 5 in the morning. What does this do? Does this give those people rights to basically just say, hey, I'm a farmer, and, you know, you've got to put up with it?
Okay, let's see if we can find out.
Mr. Moderator?
Who's that? Board of Selectmen, yep.
It does not, this particular bylaw does not exempt anyone from a nuisance call or starting a car or a rooster crowing in the morning. You still can go to the health board or hearings, or the building inspector, the zoning enforcement officer, can still be involved in the process. It's not carte blanche, where individuals say, I'm a farmer and I've been here first, therefore you can go someplace other than where you came from. So I think it still allows the laws that we already have on the books to be enforced. It's just, this is notifying someone when they come in town. To give you an example, if I may, and it may hurt somebody's feelings, but it's not my intent. To have people move in town next to the landfill, and it's obvious that it's there, and then a couple months later they're complaining because the landfill is there, when it was there. This way, at least people are notified, and they understand that there are some elements in moving to a rural community. You know, I come from the city of Chicago. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we had the stockyard, so I wasn't too far away from a farm.
Mr. Milius, I think you're still the building inspector, right? Is that how you're going to address us now? Make it a good one.
Now there's pressure. Mr. Moderator, I just want to reaffirm the comments that the right to farm does exist in most of this town already. This really isn't going to change anything. Most of our zoning is agricultural residential, which allows you to farm. Now, some subdivisions, newer developments, have some restrictive covenants that may supersede some of those things, but those are enforced in a civil manner. That is not part of zoning. That isn't anything that the zoning enforcement officer would be involved in. On the other hand, if in fact there is somebody who has an inordinate amount of chickens, I had an incident where one of my neighbors had 11 roosters. Just think about that for a minute. And there's some neighbors here who can attest to that. Mrs. Nolan, for instance. We do have a noise provision in our bylaws. Now, granted, it is not a really strict one, and it's kind of subjective in terms of what's a nuisance and what isn't. But this bylaw in particular, adopting a right to farm bylaw, really isn't going to change a single thing that's currently happening. It's not going to make it any more easier to farm or to participate in those kinds of activities. It effectively does nothing.
Okay. We had some other hands up. Yes, sir?
Robert Johnson, Home Street. For many years, I worked on the night shift up in the town of Weymouth, and I used to sleep in the daytime. I never called the police when someone mowed their lawn. I never complained about the normal noises of the daytime when I was sleeping, because I chose to move here. And I would think that somebody moving into town would take a drive around before they decide to live here and see what's here. I have a sister who lives in East Boston. She got a bullet through her front door recently and stuck in her couch. I would prefer the chickens.
Any other comments? Mr. Yes, sir?
Derek Bennett, South Street. I moved here roughly 7, 8 years ago. And one of the major reasons we chose to live in Halifax was because it was a rural community. Living in Brockton was less like living anywhere that you'd want to admit to. And I know that there are people in this room who are also former residents of Brockton and can attest to that. And the circumstances of waking up to a chicken or a tractor, or in my case, I live literally diagonally across the street from a cranberry bog. Sometimes in the morning, you're waken up by a helicopter going overhead, putting down a pesticide or something. You can live with that because it's not happening over your house, it's not in your house. If it is that great of a problem, you should probably speak with another realtor about another piece of property. So, speaking on that, I rest on it.
Okay. Any further comments? Seeing no evident, yes, ma'am?
So I think the room is probably voting for this, but I do think it's important to make this statement. I appreciate the Finance Committee's work in reviewing all the articles, but I think we can't lose sight of the fact that they are the Finance Committee, and that to weigh in on the rights of citizens may be beyond their scope. This is a budget-neutral situation. Much like the last AgCom article, I think we want to be conscious of things that will increase our tax burden in this town, and this certainly is not one of them. So I think you should support it.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes, ma'am.
Stephanie Lipinski McDonald from Franklin Street. We have been looking all our lives for 36 acres, which we bought in Halifax. I grew up on a farm in Hanson. Lipinski Farms raises the best corn in the whole South Shore. Not everything about farming is about chickens. We've got cranberry growers, we've got corn and vegetable growers, we've got honey people that, give us great honey, and we've got animals that we can share with your kids. And I think that's one of the best things. I know growing up, it made a huge difference in my life. 4-H is getting back. I think these are great things. And the reason that we want to be right to farm is, that's why we wanted to have the committee, the agricultural committee, because we're going to be the intercessor. But so the town won't have to. We're going to help with those people that have the complaints. So it's actually going to be a win-win situation. And I think we need the food, and not everybody's going to be a farmer. Because, if you have a little 4,000 square foot lot, you can still raise vegetables in your pots, but you're not a farmer. So, I think that the right to farm, it's proud, it's American, and I think we should pass it.
Yes, sir.
Jonathan Seelig, again, no relation to Charlie. Just wanted to say that if you don't think we're a farming town, we had a very successful plot for hops that would say otherwise. This is a farming town. I think we all agree we love this town. And I just want to kind of say what Terry was saying, that this doesn't change anything. This doesn't change any laws, guys. This just tells people, hey, Halifax, there's farms here. So I think we should just vote this. I think we know which way it's going to go. Let's just give people the heads up that we're a farming community, expect farming things.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on 62? Seeing no evidence of any further discussion. All those in favor of Article 62 as proposed, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Passes by majority. We'll move on to the next article. Somebody turned in a gray, looks like a key fob, so it's up here if anybody's missing it and they can't get in their car. Next article will be Article 9. Article 9 is proposed
Mr.
by the Board
Moderator?
of Selectmen. Yes, Mrs. Roy.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $5,898 to fund the provisions of the collective bargaining agreement for fiscal 2016 between IAFF Local 3159 firefighters and the town of Halifax.
Do we have a second? Second. So the motion is to, raise and appropriate $5,898 to fund the provisions of collective bargaining agreement for fiscal year 2016 between IAFF Local 3159, in parentheses, firefighters, and Town of Halifax. Mrs. Roy, it's your article.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Again, we are a very fortunate town that we have unions that have really worked with the town during negotiations and really recognize our financial condition. And this will fund the firefighters' contract to the same level that the 1% that we voted yesterday for the other town employees.
Okay. Finance Committee's recommendation on Article 9.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 9? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor of Article 9 say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next article. Next article is Article 8. Again proposed by the Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Moderator?
Mrs. Roy?
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $1 to fund the provisions of the collective bargaining agreement for fiscal year 2016 between IAFF Local 3159 firefighters in the town of Halifax, specifically adding the title of full-time lieutenant to the list of positions covered under the agreement.
Okay, do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second to raise and appropriate $1 to fund provisions of a collective bargaining agreement for fiscal year 2016 between IAFF Local 3159, in parentheses, firefighters,
Stay there.
and the town of Halifax, specifically, adding the title of full-time lieutenant to the list of positions covered under the agreement. It's your article, Mrs. Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Currently, the only employees of the town of Halifax's fire department that can have the opportunity to rise to the position of lieutenant are part-time firefighters. In an effort to unify the department and give equal credibility for the position, the decision was made to include this option for all of the personnel. Since the position already exists, there is no need to increase the budget to achieve this goal.
Okay, Finance Committee's recommendation on Article 8.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 8? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor of Article 8 as proposed say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes by majority. Next article will be Article 41. This is proposed by the Fire Chief. Board of Selectmen, I suppose, is going to make a motion.
Mr. Moderator,
Mrs. Roy.
I move that the town vote to transfer from overlay surplus the amount of $15,000 to purchase new turnout gear for the Halifax Fire Department.
We have a second? So we have a motion and a second to transfer from overlay surplus the sum of $15,000 to purchase new turnout gear for the Halifax Fire Department. Mrs. Roy?
The fire chief will explain the article.
Chief?
This is an article that's appeared, I guess, over the course of many years to replace the turnout gear. The NFPA standard is 10 years on one set of turnout gear. A typical set of turnout gear costs somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000. So with that $15,000, what we do is we replace incrementally sets of turnout gear that reach the age of 10 years. And sometimes we have new firefighters that come on staff, and we have to order gear to fit them. they all come in different shapes and sizes. So we try to recycle as much as we can, but ultimately it's to replace our turnout gear in a cycle that meets the NFPA standard.
Okay, thank you. Finance Committee's recommendation on Article 41.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 41? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor of Article 41 say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next article is Article 57. Which is proposed by the Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Moderator,
Mrs. Roy?
I would like to make a motion that we move the following article to see if the town will vote to amend the code of the Town of Halifax by adding the following. Chapter 55-3, use of e-cigarettes. The use of e-cigarettes and like devices is prohibited within buildings and structures owned by the Town of Halifax, within 100 feet of the entrances of said, oh no, that's right, I'm crossing that out. That's right.
Wait, I'm sorry, did you,
Okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to try it one more time because we had just discussed a few minutes ago striking one of the sentences.
This
so,
is Article 57, right?
yes.
All right.
So the use of e-cigarettes and like devices is prohibited within buildings and structures owned by the Town of Halifax. Period.
That's you're moving the article as written?
No, I just amended it.
Could you hold the microphone a little further away? It's like,
Sure.
That's better, thank you. Try me again.
Okay. Chapter 55-3, use of e-cigarettes. The use of e-cigarettes and devices is prohibited within buildings and structures owned by the Town of Halifax. Sorry, I'm getting giddy, I'm getting tired.
Oh, I see, so you're leaving off the last part of it. I got it, okay. So the motion is that Chapter 55-3, use of e-cigarettes, and the wording in that bylaw would be the use of e-cigarettes and like devices is prohibited within buildings and structures owned by the Town of Halifax, period. All right? We have a second on that. We have a motion and a second to change the bylaws of Halifax, particularly Chapter 55-3, which says the use of e-cigarettes and like devices is prohibited within buildings and structures owned by the Town of Halifax. Mrs. Roy, it's your article.
I'm going to have Charlie Selig speak to the article. He is the proponent of it.
Currently, we do not allow the use of tobacco products in the town buildings. We don't allow the use of alcohol. We don't allow the use of marijuana either. And I understand that there is probably not a consensus at this point whether, for instance, the secondhand vapors from e-cigarettes and the like are harmful or not harmful. But I do not want to be a guinea pig and find out that 10 years from now I've had to breathe that stuff because we've allowed that in our municipal buildings. If you go back to the history of tobacco and you look at what the tobacco companies said about secondhand smoke, for decades they denied that there was any problem. Now, it may very well be 10 or 20 years from now we'll find out, in fact, conclusively, there is no problem with the secondhand vapors from e-cigarettes. But I don't want to find that out the opposite 10 or 20 years from now, having had to breathe that stuff in my workplace. If your company wants to allow it in your workplace, great. You want to smoke them at home? Great. You want to smoke them outside? Great. But please don't have this happen in the workplaces that our municipal employees are there, and we have to be there. And you can always go outside. Thank you very much.
Finance Committee's recommendation on Article 57.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 57? Mr. Conroy, then Mrs. Hanson, and Mr. Bolger. Sort of like that's how I caught the hands first. So.
Mel Conroy, 7 Birch Road. I would ask for clarification as why the final sentence was struck.
There was a concern that given property lines and such, that we would be inhibiting people from smoking on properties that were not owned by the town. This way, we're eliminating that concern or that question. We're just eliminating it within the bounds of the buildings.
Okay, Mrs. Hanson? Thank you. Mr. Balder?
Yes, Jeff Bolger, Brandeis Circle. I had brought that up to Charlie. We had a similar policy in the Department of Correction and had to make accommodations for obviously people who commute to work who are legally have every right to smoke, to have tobacco products, and in this case an e-cigarette, in their car. You can certainly prohibit it on your property, but if a citizen was coming into the building, they should be able to leave their e-cigarettes in the car. The way it was written, it arguably would have applied to your vehicle. As Charlie alluded, there's also the issue with kind of a joint parking lot with the Congregational Church, and many people could be parishioners going to church and be within 100 feet of the building. So I think this article addresses my concern as amended.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on Article 57, rather, as proposed? Again, striking out the last clause. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of Article 57 say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next article is Article 13. Which is proposed by the Board of Selectmen. Mhm. 13.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes, Mr. Guerin.
I would move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $6,357 to fund the provisions of the collective bargaining agreement for fiscal year 2016 between the Halifax Association of Police and Patrolmen and Town of Halifax.
Okay, do we have a second? Yes, we have a motion and a second to raise and appropriate $6,357 to fund the provisions of the collective bargaining agreement fiscal year 2016 between the Halifax Police Patrolmen and the Town of Halifax. Mr. Guerin, it's your article.
Not to be repetitive, but this is similar to the other articles concerned the unions in town, that they agreed that if we were able to get 1%, that they would also be able to get the same percentage that non-union employees got. And as we voted on the other two, this is the same thing.
Finance Committee's recommendation, Article 13.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends Article 13. Any discussion on Article 13? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor of Article 13 say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next article is Article 37. Mr. Seelig is going to give you a prize, I think.
Actually, yeah, unfortunately, I forgot to bring the cookies. The cookies are back across the street, but see me after the...
Article 37, Municipal and School Building Committee. Mr. Elliott.
Mr. Moderator, Jerry Elliott, Building Maintenance. I move the town vote to transfer from undesignated fund balance the sum of $10,050 to seal coat, fill crack, and stripe the parking lot at the town hall.
Okay, do we have a second? We have a motion and a second to transfer from undesignated fund balance the sum of $10,050 to seal coat, fill cracks, and stripe the parking lots of Town Hall. Mr. Elliott, it's your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. If you haven't been to the parking lot, it's fairly hard to see where to park the cars. Some of the cracks are about a half-inch wide by a half-inch deep. The seal crack We'll fill these and make the parking lot last another 7 years, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. Finance Committee's recommendation on Article 37.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 37? Yes, sir.
Bob McCarthy, Monpont Street. If I remember correctly, last year we appropriated funds to have that parking lot striped. How was that money spent? And because it was never striped last year, so I'm just wondering where it went.
We'll find out. Mr. Elliott, do you have a recollection or answer for that?
The town accountant tells me it was passed over last year.
All right, so it was originally on the warrant, but was not acted on. Any discussion, any further discussion on Article 37? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor of Article 37 say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next article will be Article 15, which is proposed by the Board of Selectmen. Article 15, yes, Article 15.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes, Mr. Schleif.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $142,000 to pay for the public access studio and programming for the fiscal year 2016 and to establish a separate annual line item for this purpose.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second to raise and appropriate the sum of $142,000 to pay for the public access studio and programming for fiscal year 2016 and to establish a separate annual line item for this purpose. Mr. Schleif?
I defer to Charlie to explain
Mr.
the
Seeley?
intricate.
We talked about this a couple of times last night, just to review. We have the agreement with Comcast. They give us the money. We're going to be sending it over to Carver Halifax Access Television, so we're not using taxpayer money. It's basically a flow-through account, and that was the best way we could set it up using the state statutes concerning finances.
Okay, thank you. Finance Committee's recommendation on Article 15.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 15? Yes, sir.
Mike Nolan, 360 South Street. This is going to be an annual line item? This is going to come up every year
I don't know. We'll find out. Mr. Seeley?
at this amount, too. That's absurd.
Correct. There will be an annual line item. The number will go up or down depending on what revenues we are getting from Comcast or expect to get from Comcast each year. But it's basically a pass-through. Our agreement with Comcast in terms of their license is that, in fact, they send us a certain amount of money based on their revenues. We get the money. That money then goes to Carver Halifax Access Television.
Okay. Any further discussion on Article 15? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next article will be Next article will be Article 47. 47. Which is proposed by the Council on Aging. Just a minute, hold on a minute. Let me just get the right papers here. Okay, Article 47.
I move that the town vote to transfer from overlay surplus the sum of $1,500 for a new computer at Pope's Tavern Senior Center at the Halifax Council on Aging.
Okay, we have a motion to transfer from overlay surplus the sum of $1,500 for a new computer at Pope's Tavern / Halifax Council on Aging. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second to that effect. Yes, ma'am, it's your article.
Yes, this computer is for the outreach worker who works full-time, 40 hours. We're in very much need, have been in very much need for a long time with this computer. It's very tired, it's old. It's a used tower that we've had for 3 years that was passed down from another town department. So we're trying to upgrade all the equipment in the Council on Aging, so not everything is mix-matched. So we really do need it to run things more efficiently.
Okay, thank you. Finance Committee's recommendation, Article 47.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion, any further discussion on Article 47? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor of Article 47 say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next article is Article 30, proposed by the Elementary School Committee. Give me just a second, okay?
Certainly.
Article 30, go ahead.
Yes. This is my last official act as a member of the school board.
We can't hear you. Come up close, real close. There you go.
Is this better?
Yes, thank you.
This is the last official act as a member of the school committee. Mr. Monitor, I move that the town will vote to transfer from available funds the sum of $21,000 from Article 20, School Flat Roof Repair of May 12th, 2014 Annual Town Meeting, and $1,000 from Overlay Surplus for the total of $22,000 for computer equipment for the Halifax Elementary School, including 2 network switches, 1 drive array storage unit, 2 printers, and 1 air conditioner for the school's computer room.
Okay, we have a motion to transfer from available funds sum of $21,000 from Article 20, School Flat Roof Repair of the May 12th, 2014 Annual Town Meeting, and $1,000 from Overlay Surplus for a total of $22,000 for computer equipment for the Halifax Elementary School, including 2 network switches, 1 drive array / storage unit, 2 printers, and 1 air conditioner for the school's computer room. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second to that effect. You want to speak to the article?
Certainly. Mr. Monitor,
You got? I'm sorry.
We'd like to amend the amount coming from overlay surplus to $1,200. The amount printed should have been a total of $22,200.
Wait a minute. So, how much from overlay surplus?
1,200.
1,300.
200.
200. 1,200. Right?
Yep.
And the total amount is then going to be?
22,200.
22,200. Okay, so your motion is to transfer from available funds the sum of $21,000 from Article 20. Yeah. All right. Transfer from Article 20, flat roof repair, $21,000 of the May 14th, 2014 Annual Town Meeting, and $1,200 from overlay surplus for a total of $22,200 for computer equipment for the Halifax Elementary School, including 2 network switches, 1 drive array / storage unit, 2 printers, and 1 air conditioner for the school's computer room. So we have a motion and a second to that effect. You want to speak to your motion?
Yes, if you refer to the canary-colored copy marked Halifax Elementary School, Article 30, Technology, there is a listing of each of the components of that. We are currently looking to replace 2 existing switches that are more than 8 years old and were not designed to handle the current amount the network traffic that it receives. Since July of 2014, 3 switches have already failed. The total amount on that item would be $5,800. The new drive array will be used for backup on all data, all information, all materials will be safe and secured on that for $3,000. We are currently looking to replace 3 out of 5 existing high-capacity printers that are used. Say again? Said 3. Again, 3 out of 5 existing printers with high-capacity printers that are used for the majority of all print jobs in the building. The printers are approaching 13 years old and are showing significant signs of failure. Parts from 2 printers have already replaced others. Parts from 2 replaced printers are being used to keep the other 3 printers going until they will be replaced. That amount will be $2,400. The final item is a split air conditioning system for the server room. As of last summer, temperatures in the server room were regularly over 90 degrees with an internal temperature of some equipment over 110 degrees. This greatly decreases the life expectancy of critical and very expensive equipment that can also result in extremely costly failures. The server failure could easily cost over $7,000 to replace and negatively impact both our educational and operational programs for a very significant amount of time. The air conditioning unit specifically will be able to handle our current need with enough capacity to support the additional equipment. That I would also like to indicate the current server room is a former closet to the library. There is no window, there is no exterior contact, so this would have a ducting system running through, and that will go for $11,000.
Okay. Finance Committee's recommendation on Article 30?
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 30 as presented? All those, seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor of Article 30, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. The next article is Article 39. And is proposed by the Municipal School Building Committee.
Mr. Moderator, Jerry Elliott, Building Maintenance. I move the town vote to transfer from Article 40, Municipal School Building Elementary Fire Alarm Phase 2 of the May 12th, 2014 Annual Town Meeting, the sum of $6,350 to replace the flooring in the Halifax Highway Barn.
We have a motion and a second to transfer from Article 40, Municipal School Building Committee Elementary Fire Alarm Phase 2 of the May 12th, 2014 Annual Town Meeting, sum of $6,350 to replace flooring in the Halifax Highway Barn. Mr. Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The carpet has been ruined between tracking sand, salt, oil, grease, and other degrading materials. Therefore, the rug has to be ripped up, replaced. We're trying to replace it with an epoxy floor that will be low maintenance and easier to maintain.
Okay, thank you. Finance Committee's recommendation, Article 39.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 39? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next article. I'm sorry? Second. Huh? Wait a minute. A motion to adjourn. Oh, I didn't hear that. You got to get my attention, and you can't just scream and walk out the door. All right, so
wait to hear when the next town meeting is, though, before you leave, if you don't mind.
We can't just adjourn. We have to have a motion to adjourn to a time specific. Is someone willing to make that motion, Mr. Schleich?
What our moderator just said.
Tomorrow at 7:30 to resume.
Tomorrow at 7:30 to resume the business of the town meeting, so please, please try to be here. I know it's been late, but we could probably get you home pretty early tomorrow. So please try and come tomorrow night.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes.